John Lynch spoke today regarding the rumors surrounding Kyle Shanahan. So, assuming Kyle Shanahan stays with the 49ers, what direction would we like to see the rest of this season go? How would we like to see Kyle use his roster for the remainder of this season? Going into the offseason, what direction would we like to see ownership, the front office, and Kyle Shanahan take this team? What changes would we like to see them make, if any at all? All that and much more next.
Yo, it's time to grind. With Brian on the mic, content is one of a kind. Now, welcome to my show, the BS Report, where we let the truth flow. We're breaking down the stories, shining light on the games. No fake news here, just hot takes blowing flames. The BS Report, yeah, we're keeping it tight. Bringing you the news, making it ignite. Tune in, turn it up, feel the heat rise. With Brian in the house, our takes won't be compromised. From the latest news to the hottest debates, in the BS Report, we're setting the stakes. So come along, join the ride, where Brian and his subscribers are full of Niner pride. Yo.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is the BS Report. I am Brian, your host. Now let's get to it. So John Lynch went on the radio today, and he was asked about the rumors surrounding Kyle Shanahan. I'm going to play a little bit of that for you today, his response, and kind of give you my thoughts on it. So let's listen to John real quick, and then we'll get into it from there.
And we wouldn't be our hard-hitting journalists we are if we didn't ask you. That is, if you don't trade your coach to the Chicago Bears before the game, right?
It's I sit back and I try to be focused, but I've found the whole discussion on Kyle and like some of the stuff rather comical. I mean, we haven't won for the last five division championships. We've been in 2 Super Bowls. Look, the standard here.
Really, that part of it really got me. Is he really went to 4 out of the last 5 division championships? And he goes on in a second. You'll hear where he says, "Yeah, I understand that the standard is to win championships," but did he really bring up we've won 4 out of the last 5 division championships as if that's some sort of accomplishment? I mean, come on, John. Is that the standard?
Years to win championships, and we've fallen short of that. I understand, but we have an excellent head coach, and the fact people are talking about stuff like that, I do find it comical. We're 100% behind Kyle and what he brings to our organization, and like I said, our focus is really on the Bears and doing everything we can. That's where Kyle's focus is, and that's where all our focus is.
John, we wouldn't be our hard.
So, really, John, it's comedy. It's funny to you that we're at this point that fans and certain members of the media and certain, content creators are questioning whether or not Kyle should retain his position. And by the way, John, it's not just Kyle. I mean, it's you as well. There's questions regarding your, you know, job performance. So is it funny to you that we've held a lead at the 2-minute warning in 4 of our losses? That's funny. You bring up the fact that we've won 4 division championships in the last 5 years, and we've been to 2 Super Bowls. Is it funny to you that in both of those Super Bowls, we blew a lead in the 4th quarter? Is it funny to you that in one of the NFC Championship games that we didn't make it to the Super Bowl, we blew a 4th quarter lead in that game? Is it funny to you that Kyle Shanahan this season decided to use McCaffrey coming off of bilateral Achilles tendonitis at an ungodly rate to where anybody and everybody who was watching could see an injury coming? Is it funny to you that he's obviously got old, aging, slow players on this team, and he's got more explosive, young, fresher legs on the bench that he refuses to play unless someone gets hurt? Is it funny to you that Kyle Shanahan and you yourself, maybe John, I don't know. You may be just as culpable in this as he is, but you guys hand out contracts to injured old players like it's Halloween candy. That funny? Because that's kind of where fans and people who are questioning whether or not Kyle should retain his position and you should retain your position are coming from. So you can sit back and for the most part, I like John Lynch, and I think he's a good dude, and I think that he brings a lot of character to this organization, but he can sit back and think it's funny, it's comical that we can have the opinion that maybe we need a fresh voice in the room, because I can tell you one thing, I don't think it's funny. I don't think it's funny that we've hit on 2 first-round picks in your whole 8-year tenure here. I don't think it's funny that maybe Deebo Samuel's the only second-round pick we've hit on since you've been here. You know, I don't think it's funny that the reason that we're in the position that we're in today, lacking depth on this team to not be able to weather the storm when players get injured, is because we've had 2 consecutive weak drafts in a row prior to the one that we just had. I don't find any humor in that at all. So, I mean, I don't think it's comical. I can tell you one thing, if I got hired to do a job and I continuously fell short of the expectations of my boss, I don't think that he would take too kindly to me saying, "Well, I think it's funny that you're questioning whether or not I should continue to be employed here." So I think it's comical that John thinks it's comical, to be honest with you. I find it comical that he doesn't seem to have any urgency, you know? I mean, to sit there and say, "Yeah, we know we've fallen short." Yeah, you think? It's one thing if you never made it there. It's one thing if you made it to those Super Bowls and the dynasty that is the Kansas City Chiefs just wiped the floor with you. You know, it's one thing if there was a team in the NFC that was standing in your way. Like, for instance, if you were Buffalo or Baltimore in the AFC and you just couldn't get over the hump. You couldn't get past Patrick Mahomes. You know, sort of like Stockton and Malone, you know, in the 90s against the Bulls, or Charles Barkley, those teams going up against Jordan all the time. That's a little bit more understanding. Still, that's what you get paid for, to figure out a way to beat them, to figure out a way to beat the Bulls, to beat Jordan, you know. So it's only excusable to a certain degree. But in the situation that we are in, we didn't have the issue of not being able to figure out how to get past Patrick Mahomes. Not even Andy Reid, as great as he is. The problem with the 49ers is we can't figure out how to get past our own head coach. We can't figure out how to move past his desire or his need to get cute. John, was it funny that Kyle Shanahan decided to get cute and give the ball to Kyle Juszczyk on the goal line in a snow game when Jordan Mason had been pounding the rock down the Bills' throat? That wasn't funny to me. So I think that it's a little bit disrespectful for you to go on a radio station, John, and say that it's funny when guys like myself and other people out here, fans and media personalities, are questioning whether or not Kyle is still the right guy for this job, because it has been 8 years. At some point, the message starts to get stale. Nobody's questioning whether or not Kyle has done good things for this franchise. I think that Kyle's done a lot of great things for this franchise. But I also think that him and yourself, John, have made a lot of big mistakes. I would say, almost as many mistakes as you have good accomplishments. And yeah, you brought the 49ers out of the cellar. And you guys, you and Kyle put together a team of all pros and, a few future Hall of Famers, and you brought respectability back to this organization, and all the credit to you for that. But when shit starts to hit the fan and stuff starts to go wrong, and it's mostly all self-inflicted, then you don't get to sit there with your smug attitude and say, "Oh, it's funny that people would question us." Are you serious? What makes you beyond reproach? What makes Kyle beyond reproach? If he wasn't Kyle Shanahan, would he still have a job? I don't think that you or Kyle have accomplished anything in your tenure as members of this organization to be beyond reproach. So, sure, you win a Super Bowl, fine. Who are we to question the way you do things? But you didn't. Kyle didn't win a Super Bowl. He blew both of them. He didn't get beat. He beat himself. Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid did not beat the 49ers in those two Super Bowls. Kyle Shanahan did. So, the NFC Championship game against the Rams, Kyle Shanahan lost that game. You can try to blame Jaquiski Tart and this, that, and the other. No, Kyle did. Kyle did what Kyle does, and he tried to get cute. And I feel like every time I do a video, we end up back on this same track, and I try to stay away from that. That's where this video is going to end up. We're going to get away from this. But I listened to that interview and I'm just like, what the heck? Like, I don't find it humorous. The proper response would be, things aren't going well. We've made, some decisions that have not worked out right. We've made some draft picks that have not worked out right. We gave out some contracts that we thought would be good contracts and beneficial, but turns out, in hindsight, maybe they weren't. So I can understand why people would have thoughts of whether or not we can get it done. I can see where people would question that. And then he can go out and say, but I'm here to tell you that myself as the general manager still have complete confidence in Kyle. The ownership and the organization still has complete confidence in Kyle. But we do understand the frustration of the fans. We do understand the questions that are being presented and the thoughts of whether or not we can get this done. But that's not what he said. He said it's comical. It's funny. It's not funny. And that's disrespectful to sit there and make it seem like we're all delusional or, stupid. How the hell could we ever question their ability to get this done? Well, because you've had 8 years and you haven't. That's how. And because you've had multiple opportunities, at least 3, and I would even throw the Eagles one in there because you shouldn't have been blocking Hassan Reddick with the third string tight end. But we'll keep that one out. You blew 3 opportunities to hoist that trophy. And so at some point, you have to understand that the questions are going to come up. You still have your supporters out there, guys who think that you fully deserve an opportunity to continue with this. And, there's plenty of people out there that believe that way. But I still don't think even those people find any of this funny. I don't think any of them find the idea that we would question, stats. Guerrera is probably the biggest Kyle Shanahan supporter that I can think of off the top of my head. And even he is not 100% on board with the handling of a lot of stuff from Kyle Shanahan. So he questions it. Now, he doesn't think that Kyle needs to be let go, and he doesn't find the idea of it funny. He finds the idea of it pretty dumb, I think. I don't want to speak for him, but based on what I can gather, he finds the idea of us wanting to let him go dumb. But I think to some degree, he can understand why fans arrive at that conclusion. He's not ready to make that decision. He's not ready to move on. He's not ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as he would say. But I don't think that he thinks that people who have that opinion are dumb, or that's an outrageous opinion. He I think he believes that the idea that it'll happen is a little bit outrageous, but the fact that people have thought of it, I, I don't think that he believes. I could be completely wrong, and I don't want to speak for him, but just based on what I hear about him, you know, he's a Rob's a big time fan, and he's a very passionate and emotional fan. And the one thing I like about that guy is when he believes something, he stands on it, and he believes in Kyle and he stands on that. But the thing I also like about him, and it doesn't mean that he's not willing to call him out either. So, you know, John Lynch could have gone down that road. You know, he can firmly believe in Kyle Shanahan. He can firmly believe in and have confidence in his ability to correct the course here, and his own ability to correct the course. But that doesn't mean that he should find it comical or dumb that there would be some of us out there that don't believe in that ability. There's been multiple examples of coaches out there that are great coaches, good coaches that just needed a fresh start. They just needed to move on. I firmly believe that Kyle Shanahan would leave the 49ers and go to another opportunity and have success there. I don't have a doubt. I don't think Kyle would go to the Bears and flop. I don't think Kyle would go to Jacksonville or Cincinnati and flop. I believe that Kyle would go to those destinations and he would turn those teams into perennial playoff teams. That doesn't mean that he's going to do it here. That doesn't mean that he's going to get over the hump here. Sometimes it takes a fresh start. It takes a rejuvenation in order to get your mind right to be able to accomplish those goals. You know, sometimes you have to step away and take the 500-foot view of things in order to make the adjustments that you need to make. And I don't know that just refreshing it here is going to give him the view that he needs in order to make those adjustments. I'm not saying that Kyle's incapable of building another contending team somewhere else. I'm not even saying that he's not capable of doing it with the 49ers. What I don't believe is that Kyle's not capable of getting this team over the hump. You give Kyle 8 more years, sure, he can probably build another contending team. I think he would have to flip over the majority of the roster because I do personally believe that his message is stale within that locker room. So I think a majority of the 8 or 9 core players that have been here basically through the majority of his tenure would have to be turned over. But I do believe that he could potentially turn it around. What I don't think is without him getting away and getting that 500-foot view of things and having to stop and evaluate his performance, I don't believe that he'll be able to get the team over the hump because I don't think he'll make the the changes necessary in his own way of doing things to actually win it all. Because that's what he needs to do. It's not necessarily that Kyle's just a horrible coach. But he has a philosophy and a way of believing in things in a way that he just thinks that his way is the right way and the only way. And I don't think that he's capable of adjusting that mindset in the midst of the time that he's here. So that's my problem with Kyle is he's had multiple opportunities and he's seen multiple examples of why he needs to change this, that, or the other, and he won't. He hasn't. And there's nothing that leads me to believe that he will. And my only hope for him ever actually making that determination is if he gets humbled a little bit. And, I'm not completely sold that Kyle wants to continue doing this here. I personally believe that a part of him would like a refresh, would like to start over somewhere else like Chicago. You know, I personally believe that the best place for Kyle and the place where he would find the most success would probably be Jacksonville. Here's the thing, if he goes to Chicago, there's going to be immense pressure on him. They got what is pretty universally viewed as a franchise, almost a can't miss quarterback. I don't fully believe in Caleb Williams like that, but the overwhelming majority of people believe that Caleb Williams is going to be an elite great quarterback. The city of Chicago is so hungry from a base standpoint to be contenders, Super Bowl contenders, to be perennial playoff teams, to be a powerhouse in the NFC again. And that fan base will turn on him very quickly, I believe, if he's not putting up results. Because if you look at it, they're pretty much set up for him to go in there and have success immediately. And now here's the thing, I believe Kyle will, and I believe he'll get a little bit of a leeway if he has some blunders. But given his history with the 49ers and given the fact that he's blown so many leads and he's blown so many opportunities, I don't think that the fan base over there is going to be very forgiving if that trend continues there. Now, if you go somewhere like Jacksonville, where, just 3 or 4 short years ago, Trevor Lawrence was considered to be one of the greatest quarterbacks to come out of college in a long, long time. I can't think of anybody who said Trevor Lawrence is not going to be a great quarterback. And I personally believe that there's still a lot of untapped potential in that guy. I believe that he can be a lot more than he's shown. And I believe that Jacksonville has a roster that's ready to win. And I believe that Kyle and his methods and his way of doing things could bring the best out of that particular roster. And then the pressure in Jacksonville won't be there at all. The media is not going to go at him. The fans aren't going to go at him. He's going to have free run of the place. He's going to be able to do things his way. The other thing with Chicago is their fan base is very cheap. Or not their fan base, I apologize. Their ownership is very cheap. They don't like to spend a lot of money. I think in Jacksonville, Kyle would have pretty much carte blanche to do whatever he wants. So, yeah, anyways, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that John Lynch interview, and it kind of ruffled my feathers a little bit to hear, him just kind of discount half the fan base and basically, personally, because I'm one of the fans that has the opinion that he should be traded, not fired, traded, that I felt like he was kind of talking to me and thinking, like I'm a fool or a clown. And I'm like, bro, no. So let's say what he says is true and the whole organization is behind Kyle and they have no intentions to trade him. They're not going to listen to any offers. Kyle doesn't want to go nowhere. Kyle wants to stay here. And we're going to be with Kyle, going forward, at least for next season. How would we like to see this season play out for the rest of this season? Because there's a couple roads we can go. We can go all in, bring all the injured players back, play all the guys that are ailing and going through some stuff and try to make a push for that division title and get into the playoffs. And once you get in the playoffs, anything can happen. The Niners can pull it together and they can go on a run. They're very capable of it, you know. Or they can completely just tank, try to get the best draft pick possible, you know, pull everybody, just tank, give up. And then the third option is Kyle can try to rebuild some of the confidence from the players on that team, rebuild some confidence from the front office and the ownership group, and rebuild some confidence from the fan base by, what, let's see what we got in these young guys. Let's play these young guys and see what we got there. Let's see, if any of them are capable of being key contributors next year. So that gives them a better idea of what they need to target in the draft. Because personally, we're not going to have any money to spend. We're in cap hell. This team's in cap hell. I don't know how many fans have seriously got into it and looked into how much trouble this team is in financially for the next couple of years. And it really does make it, in my opinion, almost impossible to be a competing team unless we just completely blow the next couple drafts out of the water. And even the last one, the one that was good, is better than we even think it is now. Because this team is going to have to make a lot of hard decisions. And so the better look we can get at our young players on this team, maybe even players that we've written off to some degree, I think the better off we're going to be. And I think the other thing Kyle can do while doing that is to pull out some of that creativity. Be a little bit more aggressive than you would generally be. You know, let's see what you can draw up for these young guys. Don't worry so much about necessarily, and I don't want to say don't worry about getting the win, but the odds of this team going and winning the next 5 games, specifically when Detroit's right there in that one, is so slim. It is so slim. Why risk bringing Bosa back and getting him hurt? Why risk bringing Greenlaw back and re-aggravating something on him? Why not let Fred Warner's ankle heal up so that it doesn't get worse and he ends up having to have surgery? Why not let Brock's shoulder heal up so he doesn't have to have surgery? Especially if you're getting ready to really actually consider paying that guy. Why not make sure that this team is in the best position possible going into the offseason so that the majority of these players can actually get an offseason? So they're not spent rehabbing. It's going to be an early offseason more than likely for these guys. They'll have plenty of time to get refreshed, rested up, so that come training camp, all of these guys, minus maybe Ayuk, can hit the ground running. So my thing is, play the young guys. Let's see what we got in Tanner Mordecai for a few weeks, especially if we lose to Chicago. If we lose to Chicago, it's done. It's done. So why not see what you got in that guy? Play him. Let's see what we got in Jacob Cowing and Garendo and then the new back. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, from the Jets. Let's see what we got with these guys. On defense, it's time to sit Devondre Campbell. Let's see what we got in D. Winters and Jalen Graham and Bethune. Some of these young corners that we got on the team. Let's see what we got in these guys. You never know. Somebody can get in there and just light the league on fire. And if we pick up a few wins along the way, then fine. But Kyle, now's your opportunity to also bring out your creativity, to show that you still got it, to show that there's reason to believe that you're not stale, that the league doesn't have you all figured out, because that's my opinion, that it's this nobody's afraid of this offense. The defenses in this league know how to stop it. And nobody's afraid of this defense. They know how to beat it. So dust off that playbook, Kyle. Bring out your bag of tricks and let's see what you got. How about bring a little bit of excitement into this fan base going into the offseason? Even if we're not getting the wins, but we're getting excited because we're getting to see the potential of the players that are on this team, the younger guys. Because we get excited to see the potential of what this offense can be if you get back into your bag, if you get back into your mad scientist mindset. You bring out the genius that everybody says is there. So let's see it. Regardless of wins or losses, I don't expect to win any more games this year. You could play all the starters. You could play everybody. Bosa could come back, Trent can come back, Greenlaw can come back, Purdy can stay in there. I personally can't, with a clear conscience, pick the 49ers to win any game the remainder of the season. So if that's the way it's going to be anyways, I'd rather have the excitement of seeing some of these young guys get in there and get some run, see what they can do. And that'll only prepare them more for next season when they're going to be relied on. So that's the way that I would like to see the rest of this season go. And now I believe that if Kyle retains his position as head coach going into the offseason, there needs to be some pretty significant changes in how this team is ran from an organizational standpoint. I believe first and foremost that there needs to be some sort of a draft guru, a GM really, but his strong point needs to be the draft. We have missed on way too many early draft picks. And I think that this person needs to be empowered to have the final say on that stuff. Not to say that he doesn't consult with Kyle, he doesn't talk to Kyle. John can even keep his job as president of football operations or whatever, but this guy needs to be the GM, whoever it is. I don't know who it is. I don't necessarily trust Jed to make the right decision in that regard, but that's all we got. And so I would say that we need to bring in somebody who is a bona fide college talent evaluator, and he, along with the scouting department, which I believe our scouting department is top notch, because you know what, we've hit on so many late round draft picks, and I believe that those picks are scouting department picks. And so I believe the combination of a GM and the scouting department that he works hand in hand with, we can turn this around as far as our draft goes. And that's not to say we're going to hit every single pick, but it can surely be better than the 2 or 3 players out of 15 in the first few rounds. So that's first and foremost what I think needs to happen, because there is no possible way that this team has any hope of contending or even competing in the next couple of years without a couple very, very, very strong draft classes. And I believe that in order to do that, it needs to be somebody besides who we already have here. And I think that power needs to be stripped away from Kyle, regardless of how he feels about it. It needs to happen. I think another thing that needs to happen this offseason is, regardless of the salary cap ramifications for next season, I think that we need to move off of our aging, often injured players. I mean, I know it probably can't be all of them, but the ones that we can, I think it needs to happen. We need to get fresh blood in this organization. We need to move on from the Cabo clique. Check needs to go. Hargrave needs to go. I'm sorry, I believe Debo needs to go. Personally, I wouldn't even be opposed to trading Nick Bosa. And I know people are probably like, you're nuts. But here's my thinking on this. I don't see us being anywhere near contention for the next few seasons as it is. A few seasons from now, what version of Nick Bosa are we going to have? What does 31, 32-year-old Nick Bosa look like? So I believe that we could probably at this point in time get 2 first-round picks for him. And that would go a long ways combined with a draft guru as a GM, a player personnel guy, somebody who has an eye for talent. That would go a long ways to speeding up and putting a great start to the refresh of this team. And I think that it would be beneficial to Nick Bosa as well to trade him to a team who potentially is closer to competing for championships than the 49ers are right now, because we're not close and we're not going to be for a while. And I know 49er fans that sucks to hear. And a lot of you guys want to think that we're going to have a resurgence like Philadelphia had. Last year they looked like they were dead in the water. And then this year they come out and they're lighting the NFL on fire. It's not going to happen. There's no Saquon Barkley coming to the 49ers next year to save us. CMC is not going to come back and be CMC of last year. Brandon Ayuk isn't going to come back next year and be Brandon Ayuk of next year. The other difference between the Eagles this year and the Niners next year is that the Eagles weren't dealing with a deficit as far as talent goes on that roster. They had successful drafts leading up to this season. They didn't have a bunch of blundered picks like the 49ers had. And so, they had the ability to kind of refresh on the fly very quickly and get things turned around right away. That's not something that we're going to be able to do. So I really believe that getting rid of Bosa, and that sounds bad to say because I don't really think we need to get rid of him. We just need to use the great player that he is and get assets for him to help us to get to where we ultimately want to get, because I believe by the time we're ready to compete at that level again, he's going to be a shell of himself, or he's going to be knocking on the door of it anyways. So why not? Bosa's already shown a tendency to get nicked up here and there. And when he does, it's like, it's not just like, oh, he just showed up on the injury. Like, he's out. And his production since he signed that contract has already started to fall every year more and more. There's nothing there that leads me to believe that all of a sudden he's just going to turn it back up and become Nick Bosa of old again. So why not maximize the value now? And so, and I really think that there needs to be a shift in the thinking of Kyle, which would go a long ways with the new GM, of his philosophy on the offensive line. The offensive line needs to become a priority for this team. We need to be able to rely on an offensive line to protect Purdy or whoever the quarterback is going forward. And right now, I can't say that anybody should have any confidence in that whatsoever. And the way that Kyle believes in building an offensive line doesn't breathe any confidence in me that that's something that's going to change going forward. That's another reason why I believe that we need to get new front office leadership in here, because that philosophy has to be different. There's not a lot of successful teams that I can think of in this league where they have such a nonchalant attitude towards protecting their quarterbacks. And it just baffles me to no end that that's Kyle's mentality on that. And, I believe that Kyle needs to be forced by John or Jed, I guess, to hire an offensive coordinator. Not necessarily to take play calling duties away from him. But I think that he needs to hire an offensive coordinator that specializes in quarterback development. Because that is one thing that Kyle has never shown the ability to do. And I believe that that is something that is severely lacking on this team. Is somebody that has a track record and a history of being able to work with quarterbacks and actually develop them. This team did not develop Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy came in turnkey. He was ready to go. And so that's why Trey Lance didn't work, because he needed to be developed. And that's why I don't think that unless we do that, unless we bring in another offensive coordinator who has the ability to develop a quarterback, Kyle shouldn't be given the opportunity to draft another one. Because it really does pain me to say this, because I am such a fan of Brock Purdy. But I don't believe that Brock Purdy is our franchise quarterback. And it really sucks to say that, because I really, 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 really am a fan of his. I believe that even with Brock Purdy on this roster, that another philosophy that this team needs to have is they need to be drafting a quarterback in every draft at some point. I wouldn't be opposed if we get a top 10 pick this year. I wouldn't be opposed to taking a hard look at a couple of these quarterbacks this year. It sucks, man, because I really do like Brock Purdy. But as much as I'm a fan of him personally, I'm a bigger fan of the 49ers. And so I wish him nothing but success if he moves on to somewhere else. But I want a franchise quarterback on this team. And I think that we need to keep drafting quarterbacks until we find one. And if we get a top 10 pick, take a look. That doesn't mean we have to take one. But if you have a new GM in there and he's sold on one of these guys, then do it. Don't give up 3 first-round picks and trade up to get one. But if one falls to you wherever you pick and you have conviction, then do it. And you know what? For that matter, if you need to trade up a few spots and you have enough conviction on a guy, then do it. But we need to start thinking about that, because Brock Purdy's not that guy, and we cannot pay him 50, 55, 60 million this offseason. We cannot do it. If this team does that, that's a wrap for however long that contract goes. We are not winning anything for as long as that contract goes, if that's what this team does. Unless somehow we hit on like 5 or 6 superstar players on rookie contracts in the next few drafts while Brock's on that outrageous contract. So I believe that he needs to, Kyle, John, and whoever the new general manager of this team is, they need to draft quarterbacks. And we need to be seeing if there's any way that we can develop another franchise quarterback for this team. And I would say another thing that Kyle needs to do, the last thing I would say he needs to do this offseason is he needs to reevaluate his scheme. He needs to be willing to incorporate new things into his scheme. He needs to feature George Kittle like the potential future Hall of Fame tight end that he is. He needs to use him like an all-pro superstar tight end because he is. He needs to not go into next season thinking that Christian McCaffrey is going to come in and be the old Christian McCaffrey. He needs to not think that Christian McCaffrey needs to be a bell cow running back. He needs to split carries with a running back. And one guy that I like, who I think, and I maybe have some bias here, but I encourage you all to go watch this guy, Cam Scatteraboo from ASU, from Arizona State. This dude would be a monster as a 1-2 punch with Christian McCaffrey. The red zone offense, give that guy the ball and move the hell out of the way. And I believe like if there was a way that we could pick him up, man, that I honestly believe that he's a game changer. And so I just think that Kyle needs to adjust his philosophy a little bit. Go back to the way it was in the beginning before we got McCaffrey, when it really was running back by committee on this team. And he needs to be able to feature George Kittle more than he does. He needs to quit being so stubborn in the way that he views offense. Andy Reid, when he drafted Mahomes, went to Texas Tech and studied that offense. Kyle Shanahan needs to be willing to do the same type of a gesture. He needs to be willing to study other offenses and poach what he can from them and instill them into his offense, because his offense is stale. And somebody, I don't know who it is, Jed, John, anyone, his dad, I don't care. Somebody needs to get that through to him. So, and the same thing on defense. They need to get away from the same stale, boring, old played out scheme that they're running. It's time to adjust. It's time to catch up with the times. It's been figured out. Teams know how to beat it. So it's time for Kyle to take a hard look in the mirror and make some serious changes this offseason if he's going to remain the coach of the 49ers going forward. And I think these all need to be mandated by Jed. And if Kyle is unwilling to adhere to these changes, then he can resign. And if he does, go ahead, go sit out for a year. And then next year, when you're ready to go coach some other team, they can give us a first round pick for you, like they did with Sean Payton. That's it. I think that if we are going to retain Kyle, in my opinion, these are a lot of the changes that need to happen. These are a lot of the things that would at least give me hope going forward that Kyle can correct this. Because if he's willing to do these things, if he's willing to accept a GM coming in and reducing his power, if he's willing to accept an offensive coordinator that will specialize in quarterback development, if he's willing to accept, lessening the role of Christian McCaffrey and kind of learning the way other offenses operate and instilling some of that into his game plan, then that would give me confidence that when he gets into a big game situation, when he gets a 10-point lead in the Super Bowl again, that he has learned from his mistakes, maybe he has evolved, and maybe he can pull it out this time. But if we just go into next season with the same old shit, the same old way of doing things, I have no hope. There's no way that we can expect a different result if we're going to keep doing the same shit over and over again. So that's it, guys. That's the show. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think. How do you guys see the rest of the season going? How would you like to see the rest of the season go? Would you like Kyle to keep going out there with all the guys and hoping we can run off 5 wins in a row, or would you like to see him play some of these young guys and see if he can bring the creativity back out of himself again? And what are your guys' plans for the offseason? Put it in the comments. What do you guys think would be an ideal offseason for us? So that's it. That's the show. Until next time, guys. Thanks.